Hi, Bill. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks for having me.
Could we start off, Bill, could you tell us a little bit about where you were born and how family life was while you were growing up? And was yours a musical family?
Yeah, it was. I was born in Vancouver, and yeah, I was there through grade one, and then we actually in Burnaby, and then we moved to Vancouver Island and lived in a place called Yellow Point, which was very formative for me, a beautiful, beautiful place. Arbutus trees and the whole West Coast Sailor Sea thing was what I grew up in. And my mom sang all the time, and she was, this was this was in the 50s, early 50s when we came there to Yellow Point. My mom was a housewife. My dad, worked in Nanaimo. He drove every day to Nanaimo and back. My mom was a housewife, and she sang all the time. She's working, sweeping up, or she's doing dishes, or she's preparing food, or she's making plans for this or that, or the other thing. She was singing all the time, and she sang the American Songbook. Essentially, she was a real, Sinatra fan and all of those people. So she sang that music, and it gave me a grounding in the American Songbook, and that I know those songs. I wasn't a fan. And when Elvis came along, which, I was about 10 or 11, I guess I was 11 or 12 actually, and Elvis came along, and that was like the world just opened up, with the Everly Brothers and Elvis and Buddy Holly and Little Richard. And, man, all that stuff just exploded at once, it seemed like, right? And it was so, it's a funny thing because I look at it now, how I see now what some things that were going on there that I didn't understand at the time, and part of it was that swagger. It was Southern U.S. swagger. That's what those guys were doing. That was their culture, and they brought, and it still is. A lot of it still is there, and we are having trouble with it right now. But which makes it really interesting to me that music that came out of that energy was so effective. It grabbed people. It grabbed me. It grabbed all the people around me. We were all into it. Everybody was into Elvis. Everybody was into Buddy Holly. My mom was saying, well, at least Elvis can sing. I don't like the music, but at least he can sing. So, she was the Sinatra. That was the northern culture of the United States. But this stuff was Southern. And it's so interesting to see how it fits into today, and it makes me really, I look at Donald Trump and I go, he's a rock star. He's being a rock star. Look at how he throws hats out to the audience when he walks on stage. Look at all that stuff. It's all rock star shit, right? That's what he's doing. And it makes me reflect on what I've been doing and where I come from and where my music comes from. It's quite interesting.
Right. Yeah, that is, that's really interesting. So going way back again, when you first got into music yourself, was guitar your first instrument?
Yeah, it was. Well, I was in the car with my dad one day coming back from Nanaimo. I used to work on Saturday afternoons in his shop, and and a song came on the radio, and it had the sound. I said, what's that sound? And he said, that's electric guitar. And I said, I want to do that. So it was like the first thing that I really felt I wanted to do. I didn't care about singing. I wanted to play that. I wanted to make that sound. So But my parents said, okay, so they gave me a guitar for Christmas, and they said, but you have to take lessons. So I said, okay. So I went and took lessons, but the guy was teaching me. He was teaching me Hawaiian guitar, and I didn't like Hawaiian music. I wanted to play rock and roll. And this guy had a symphony. He was the guy who was the head of the Nanaimo Philharmonic, or whatever it was called at the time. And so I didn't last long with guitar, and I was off to other things. It was piano, saxophone, and I finally, by the time I was in grade, what was it, 9? Yeah, and we're up in Fort St. John, living in Fort St. John, and I said to my mom, I have to have a guitar. So she got the money, and I went and bought an acoustic, and I just tuned the whole thing to a chord, because that I understood. I didn't know all that fingering stuff, but I could go up, down like a slide player, but it wasn't even a slide, and most of the songs I liked, I could play that way. So, and that was the beginning of guitar for me. Yeah.
Right. So did you eventually seek more formal music training along the way, like
Yeah,
university?
I did. Yeah, because what happened was, the piano had sort of introduced me to a certain amount of theory, and then I started to notice that there were these chord relationships that I found on the piano, and I thought when I found them, actually it was like C, F, G. 1, 4, 5. I found that on the piano. I go dana dana dunu dana duna dana dunu dunu dana and I went, wow, I made up a song. Of course, it wasn't long after that I realized, no, this is something I've been hearing in all kinds of songs. Lots of songs have this in them, and different ways they use it, but the same basic thing. So theory went into my mind. I started seeing music from the inside, and then I was in grade 12. I got a job playing in a dining and dancing place, playing the American Songbook with a real guitar player, and I was just the rhythm guitar player. But he taught me all these chords, jazz chords, and so after that, I mean, that's all I did all day long was just. Well, I had schoolwork, but other than that, that's all I did was work on those things. I didn't have a social life, and then I came to Vancouver. That was in Edmonton. I came to Vancouver when I graduated from grade 12, and my mom wanted me to go to university, and she thought I was going to be a lawyer, and I went to university and I signed up for music. went to the music department. And yeah, I got to study classical music because that's what they were teaching was classical. And they didn't like my guitar. And they said, well, can you play anything else? I said, flute. Oh, we'll do that. But I heard, yeah, man, it was incredible education. I went every Wednesday lunch hour. You could go to the Buchanan building and hear a string quartet play one of Beethoven's string quartets, and they started at the beginning and they went through his entire repertoire of string quartets over the period of a year or so, whatever it was. And I went to every one, and it was phenomenal to hear what was happening. And at first, when I went there, it was like, I don't know how to listen to this music. I don't know how to enjoy it. I don't know how to listen to it. What do I do, right? And so I decided just to let it just wash over me and not think about it. And that was the solution. And it came in, and gradually it started to work for me, and I started to understand it. And Beethoven, by the end of his career, was writing like Bartok in the 20th century. Anyway, and then I learned about Bartok, and I learned about John Cage, and that was one of the most fantastic and most interesting journeys. John Cage, the guy who wrote Silence, and went and played it live in front of an audience of, some 250 people probably. He sits down at the piano, sets his watch, sits down at the piano, and sits there and does nothing for 2 minutes and however many seconds it was. It was a specific amount of time, utter silence, right? And that was his music. Of course, he did lots of other things where he made sounds, but these things opened up my mind, as to what is music, what constitutes music? Does it have to be, because obviously it no longer had to be harmonic. When you listen to the music of, you listen to native indigenous music from this coastline, you don't hear chords. You hear melody and you hear drum. And that's not the only place where that happened. And it turns out that the scientific mind that we developed as a Western culture that took us right off the rails with the environment also invented, or didn't invent it actually, discovered harmony. And this is one thing I like to say about harmony. I know I'm carrying on kind of long, but one thing I want to say about harmony, which is so interesting, is that harmony comes from a single note. If you play a single note and you're a guitar player, you know that you can just touch the string at the 12th fret, 7th fret, 5th fret, play them, and you get what are called harmonics. And what you're hearing is the harmonic series. And what's happening is that when you pluck that low E string, bang, you let that low E string ring out, all those notes are ringing, not just the fundamental, not just the one you think you're tuning. You're actually tuning the whole harmonic series on top of that. And when you look at the harmonic series, the chords are there. The essential building blocks of harmony are right in a single note. So all are in the one, and the one contains all, right, for harmony. So that's really an interesting thing, because a lot of composers in the 20th century who were using their minds to think, anything's music, any sound is music, and they started doing things that were purposely non-harmonic, and they didn't get a big audience. And part of the reason is because harmony's built right in. It's built right into notes. So it's very, very natural. And to break all those rules is to break all those rules. That's all it is. Clever you. It's a way to, you could look at it that way. But there obviously were composers who wrote some pretty cool music that was totally non-harmonic.
Oh, that's interesting. So during this kind of journey of discovery with music, did you ever consider at that point that you were going to have a career in music?
I think when I got that guitar at Christmas time and I didn't know what to do with it except strum the open strings, I sat out on the porch. It was a warm Christmas day, and I sat out on the porch, and I felt like I was being a star. I felt like I was performing for people. And frankly, I had performed since I was a little kid. Always. Not music, but, I always was a performer. It's just, and I got it from my mom. And my dad, both of them were that way. So it's kind of in the genes, but it's just something I always was. And that's why if there's no audience, there's no show, because to perform, you have to have someone to perform for. If you don't have an audience, it's dead.
So Bill, recordings and concerts from the 60s band, The Collectors, were the first time we really got to hear Bill Henderson. How did that band come together? And what do you recall as some of your fondest memories with the band?
Yeah, that band was so cool. They had it. There was a band called the Seafun Classics that ended up on a show on CBC called Let's Go. It was part of the Music Hop series that happened across Canada on different days of the week, and I think it was weekly. And this band, the Classics, got the job of being on the Let's Go show. I wasn't in the Classics, but three of the Collectors were what became the Collectors band. That was Claire Lawrence, Howie Vickers, and Glenn Miller. Anyway, Ross Turney had the gig at the Torch Cabaret in Vancouver, downtown Vancouver. The Torch Cabaret, which was a kind of a strip club, rhythm and blues, that kind of stuff. So they needed he hired these guys, Claire, Howie, and eventually Glenn,
for that band. Ross did that. And they had Terry Fruer on guitar, and Terry was leaving the band. And I had seen this guy, Claire Lawrence, play at the Flat Five because he was a jazz player, and I was into jazz. So I would go out to the Flat Five to see people, watch people play. And Claire showed up one time, and there was this jam going on, and there used to be jams where the rhythm section, drums and bass and a piano player maybe they'd just be going, you know, doom 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 that doom that doom doom that, you know, they get the stuff going, and various horn players would get up on stage and start jamming with them, right? And there were several that night, and all the guys that played before Claire, I noticed they all played like really fast. Man, they played fast, and they played fast right from the very first bar. They played every note in their heads in the first bar, and they never stopped the whole time they played. And it was kind of like a show-off thing more than anything else. But Claire got up there, and he got a sax. He sort of adjusts the mouthpiece a little bit like this, and he gets a sound. He gets a note he likes. Goes wah, da, he just starts fooling around with other notes, and you're going, oh, this is interesting, and it keeps growing and growing. And in the end, by the time he'd done his whatever 32 bars that they were allowed, he was going as fast as anybody else. But you were with him on the whole journey. So when I got a phone call about a couple months later, and it was him, and he said, Bill, I got your number from so-and-so. We've got this band at the Torch Cabaret, and our guitar player's leaving, and do you want to join? And knowing it was Claire, I just went, yeah, right away. I just went, yeah. I didn't say how much money, how often do we play, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I got to play with this band, with this player that I pretty much revered, and I learned how to play R&B. I had never heard R&B before, and I learned what dang it means. You know, when I first heard it, I went, well, why would you do that? Dang it, that, you know, what is that? Well, it's R&B, and I got into it, and it was really cool. So that band, we wrote new songs every day, and every time we got a new song that we thought was good, we put it in our set and threw out one of the old ones. And the hippies from 4th Avenue would come downtown to watch this band at the Torch Cabaret, and pretty soon a guy named Jack Hirshhorn came down, who had a friend with a record company in LA, a little independent company that had Rhythm in the Rain and had the Association, Along Comes Mary, and they had a couple hits, right? So we got connected up in that way and went down to LA and got going. Got a record contract with this little label, and then they were bought out by Warner Brothers. So then we were on Warner Brothers, and Dave Hassinger, who had engineered the Rolling Stones and Satisfaction and all their early stuff, he was their engineer. He was our producer, and so we had some great people. We were working with some great people. We were really, really lucky. Yeah. It was quite the experience, and that band went on for, I think it was 3 years. 67 was our first record came out in 67. It went to number 3 in Canada, which is pretty cool. And anyway, it went till 1970, and then Howie left the group, and we changed our name to Chilliwack and went on from there.
Right.
I don't know if that's what you wanted to know, but
yeah, no, that's cool. So, you know, as you say, in 1970, you formed Chilliwack with some of the former members of the Collectors, and at that point, you assumed the lead vocal role. So, were you writing most of the material by this time?
I was involved in pretty much every song we did as a writer, and sometimes they were just my song, and sometimes they were co-writes with other band members. So yeah, I was a strong contributor to the writing, and that just kept basically growing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, Chilliwack has always been very highly considered in the Canadian music industry. Are you happy with the degree of popularity the band has had over the years? And as leader of the band, is there anything that in retrospect you would have done differently? I mean, the band's still going, obviously, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
something for sure.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things that could have been done better, differently, and better. And my focus was, I did want to be really successful, but um, I wasn't as devoted to that as some people are, and so I was kind of lazy about it. Um, but I tried, and when we got to that point, like in the late '70s and early '80s, when Brian was in the band and everything, at that point I became pretty focused on success. So, success is a funny thing, right? Because there's all kinds of very talented people who do great music who don't become successful in that way, that they have a big career that they can rely on for the rest of their lives, kind of thing. And not very many people are that lucky, because I also relied on my luck. My luck has always been good, and I always believed in it. I kind of believe, I don't think of luck as luck. I think of luck as more connection. It's like, beginner's luck. Beginner's luck, it's kind of a funny thing, right? People go, "Oh, that's just beginner's luck." Yeah, well, what is it about those beginners that makes them lucky? What is it about them that they score first time? What is that? What is it when you are working in the garden and you pull up a rock, you turn around, you just throw it without hardly looking, the bucket's over there, it goes right in the bucket. What is that? I have a sense that there's something there, and I always had that sense, and I always felt that there was more. And I learned in songwriting. Songwriting was a great teacher, because the first thing I learned was that nobody wanted to hear my ideas. They want something that connects to them, and I found that happened when I wasn't looking. It's like, what is that? When we're not trying, we suddenly do it.
It's
That is.
it's like serendipity, eh?
Yeah, it is, and you could call it luck. You could call it your muse. I don't know what it is exactly, but I learned to listen to my song instead of trying to write my song. I would play the guitar, and something would start happening, and I would be listening for something that moved me. And my wife was always really a great help in that. Like, she'd go, "Oh," she said the two things that are most important things that can be said to a songwriter. She would say to me. The first one was, "What is that? I really like that," because then I knew I had something. If I relied on my little kicker up here to tell me when I had something, wrong. Most of the time, wrong. Nice idea, Bill. Wrong. But she'd say, "I really like that. What is it?" And I'd go, okay, good. I don't know. I'd say, I don't know. But yeah. So I'd work on it. The next thing she said to me, that was one of the other of the two most important things you can say to a songwriter, was, "I liked it better before." And that's how I learned to keep my brain at a distance from my work, not too close. And it's important, but it doesn't come up with the best stuff. So I would keep, when I wrote a song, I basically write the lyrics on there. Sometimes chord symbols if I wanted to remind myself, but usually the music, I knew what it was. It's the lyric that was growing and evolving, and I would write the lyrics down, and then I'd do edits, and I'd go, okay, this is better if I put the bridge in here, and I do this and this, and so I'd write it out again, and I'd put that second sheet on top of the first sheet, and I'd pin them together with a paper clip. And every time I had a new edit, it would go on top, and it would get pinned with the rest of them with a paper clip. And when she would say, "I liked it better before," I'd lift those sheets up and go back to where I knew it was happening and see if I could spot where I made my mistake. So all of this was learning where the muse is, what it is, how your creativity works. And so being successful, that was the success I wanted. That was the success I was looking for, where I could really come up with something. I could really, and I could put it together, and it would hold, it would work, and people go, "Oh, that's really nice."
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So, so Bill, just to close here, you've been awarded with the Order of Canada, as well as finally being recognized with the induction of Chilliwack into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. Having known you for some time, I don't see you as the kind of guy to kick back and rest on your laurels, as it were. What plans do you have for the future?
Well, I'm still writing. I've got a song right now that you can find a link to on my Facebook page, and I just recorded it with acoustic guitar and voice, and a video that a friend shot for me, and I'm pretty proud of it. It's called "Dusty Old Guitar," and the original idea was I had it in 1974. I had the title and I had the first two lines, but I didn't know what to do with the song. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know where it wanted to go. And over this last year, it became apparent to me. It started coming back into my head. I would hear it and I go, "That is really nice. I should do something with that." And it gradually worked its way out. So I'm still writing songs, and I want my songs now. I spent many years writing songs where I was wooing record companies so that they would finance the recording of an album. And sometimes those songs weren't really what I wanted to say or what I thought was important or that kind of stuff. So now I'm writing songs like "Take Back This Land" and songs like that are about where we are collectively, where we are as a group, what we're doing, and I try to put in there things that I think are helpful. I hope are helpful. I would like them to be helpful. The things that I think are true, that would be a benefit for us as a group, all of us, Canadians, our culture. So that's what I'm doing, and it's constantly no one's interested. So there you go. Many. That's not true. There are people who are, but when I was wooing record companies, that would not have created enough interest. So maybe
Right.
someday I'll write one like Leonard has written. Some of the stuff he's written that just goes so deep right into it all, right? With a few
Oh, yeah.
words. Maybe someday. I would love that.
Well, we're looking forward to that, Bill. So,
Thank
hey,
you.
thanks so much for joining us today. This has been awesome. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Phil. I appreciate it.